to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. Unless you're brand new to the show, then you know I'm all about sales. It's my jam. It's basically what I've been doing since forever. It's what I'm good at. It's what I'm passionate about. And it has been my main role at WindowWorks since we opened. I consider myself a strong salesperson by nature and by training. And I don't mean the sleazy car salesman kind. I mean the kind of sales that are a win-win for me, the company that I'm with, and for my customer. I'm particularly good at hearing what people are trying to say, even if they don't come out and say it. Often I can gauge what a person's needs are, what their concerns are, and this will always help me figure out the outcome that they want. But today's guest, Michelle Butt, is bringing an idea to the table that I've never heard of before. The process of reading people's faces so that you can interpret what makes them tick, so that in turn you can understand how to relate to them better, and then you can in turn be a better salesperson. Now, before I tell you more about this, let's take a moment to thank our show sponsor, Revel Woods. You are not a personal shopper. You are an interior designer. You have a unique skill that enables you to bring dozens of elements together to create a single spectacular vision for a space. And few elements can impact a space the way flooring can. And we know it can be super challenging to create the vision that you want when you don't have creative control over this very critical element. Well, help is on the way. Revel Woods helps by teaching you how to be part of the flooring supply chain. Do you want to know how? Here's how. True wholesale pricing allows you to charge competitive pricing for comparable products at flooring retailers. They have protected branding, which prevents you from being shopped at those same retailers. Expert knowledge and service. Revel Woods walks you through the entire process and stays with you from the initial sampling all the way through installation. They can even help you find an installer if you don't already have one that you're working with. The bottom line, whether you've been sourcing flooring for years or know nothing about flooring, Revel Woods is here to help you and help you add flooring to your product mix and add profits to your business. See for yourself how awesome the Revel Wood product is and how terrific they are to work with. Go to revelwoods, RevelWoods.com and sign up for a pro account. That's revelwoods.com. Okay, so Michelle Butt has an honors BA in linguistics from the University of Toronto. She is a master coach and she is a facial intelligence expert. After more than 10 years of studying human communication and creating the facial intelligence body of work, Michelle has come to know a thing or two about what drives people to believe in someone else enough to buy from them. She's built an understanding of how coaches, consultants, and mentors need to show up to that crucial sales call in order to get yes and to truly begin the process of changing someone else's life and their own in the process of doing that, right? So today, Michelle is going to share with us what facial intelligence is, how she uses it to her advantage, and how we can use it to strengthen our sales game. Let's hear what Michelle has to say about this innovative approach to sales. Hi, Michelle. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. So happy to be here.
No. See, I'm happy you're here because we're going to talk about sales today, and this is my jam. I love talking about sales.
Oh, yeah, and a different face of sales today too.
Exactly. So that's the thing. So, Michelle, you are an expert in helping people be better salesmen, whether it's trying to close into your design projects or whatever it is. But your little claim there and your little niche in this industry is teaching people the value of what our potential clients are saying to us, I guess subconsciously, covertly, whatever it is, by their face. And for us to teach all of us how to read the face better and to understand that aspect of the sales process. Like, tell me where we're going with this, Michelle.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I do, it's this branch of work that I've created through an amalgamation of things, and it's called facial intelligence. And really what it is, it's looking at features, markings, wrinkles on the face to understand someone's personality, their buying decisions, what's going on in their head, how they like to move through the world just by what's showing up on their face to give you a good idea as to how to connect with them and how to say things and present things so that it feels most resonant and they're like, oh yeah, you're the person for me, I need to do this thing with you or get this product or service from you.
So you know what? It reminds me, like, I just visualizing this. I feel like, to some extent, don't all humans intuitively gather this information automatically? In other words, isn't that one of the things that separates us from, well, dogs make faces, I guess, but you know what I mean? Like, isn't that one of the things that's intuitively wired into us, is to read someone else's face and understand, oh, we need to show sympathy or empathy there, or they're happy, I'm happy. But so tell me the difference in that and where you take it, and what am I not seeing in that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we all do unconsciously read faces, and most of the time we read faces for expressions because there are universal expressions that we can mirror and match and understand. And we do unconsciously, to some degree, read features to understand what they mean, but most of us don't consciously do that. And what I mean by that is oftentimes when we look at a feature on somebody else's face, if it kind of looks like the feature that we see in the mirror of our own faces, then we're like, oh yeah, I know how to say that exactly because you the face that you're seeing has some semblance to yours, or maybe the eyebrows or the nose. So you know how you would like to hear the thing you're presenting. But if that face is different, you still may present your thing in the way you think you would want to hear it, but that other person needs to hear it the way they want to hear it. So that's the difference, that when you start to read features and faces consciously, there's a new level of understanding that you can then translate into new ways of communicating.
Okay, so I'm going to make a comparison here. I feel like I
Mhm.
have no idea if I'm good at this or not good at this, consciously or subconsciously, okay? But what I just heard in there is, what I do feel like I'm very good at, is hearing what somebody is saying despite what their words are saying. So,
Mhm.
for example, I will very often be, maybe it's me and one of the people on my sales team, or it's me and my husband in a conversation. And I might be listening to the conversation and someone will ask a question. Maybe it's our sales team is asking a question of the customer, or my husband is asking a question of somebody. And when the answer from the customer comes back, I will notice that my husband or the sales team has not addressed the question or the answer that they gave. That they just, it's almost like I say, hey, do you like blue or brown? And the customer says, I really like yellow. I know brown is really a good color and blue is sometimes hard. And I'm like, hello, customer just said yellow. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Except that it's much more complicated like that the sentence is much more complicated. The paragraph is much more complicated, but there's a nuance in there, what somebody's really saying. And what are you saying to me, that's similarly it's possible to develop the talent to not just listen to what they're truly saying, despite what the words they choose, but to see in their face the clues that might help us be more successful.
Yes.
Whoa.
And I can say that because having seen your face, one of the talents that you have in your face is that you're very much a detail oriented person. You pay attention to details. And so it's almost like you can see the big picture and all the details at the start of anything. So you're already paying attention to the subtleties of conversations or situations or rooms or that people with different faces might not pick up. And so that's part of your facial design. So you would, you saying that to me, I'm like, of course, LuAnn's going to hear the details that other people might miss, because that's exactly what her face is saying. So, from a perspective of someone on the receiving end of that detail oriented personality, I would be like, yes, this is the person that I want to design my space, because they're not going to miss a thing. But also from the perspective of someone who might be selling you something, I'm going to know by looking at you, hey, Michelle, you better pay attention to all the details, because LuAnn is a detailed person. And if you go from A to Z instead of going A, B, C, D, and E, she might catch that and think, oh, she's not detailed enough to be on this project with me.
Okay, this is really crazy, because if I go back to the little last recording, I don't think we talked more than 4 or 5 minutes. Okay. And I usually, what's so funny is very often I will spend much longer than that on the initial pre-show chat. But because I was late and I needed to ask you to delay the recording, the start of the recording, I said, we can't talk for 20 minutes. The lady's, she's a business lady. She's got a time schedule. Get right to it. And I have to, how did you know that in my face? Because I feel like I was looking at you and talking to you, but I literally had this in my thought. I'm like, oh, I need to check my audio settings. I need to do that while she's talking. But that's, this lady's reading my face, and what she's reading right now is I'm doing two things at once. I'm like, LuAnn, she's not your psychologist. Just do what you got to do and get the show started. So what I don't get that. If we had spent 15 minutes talking like I typically do, then I would have understood how you did all that. And I'm going to let you answer. But I do have to explain this. For everyone that's listening that knows me really well, whether they know me really well through the podcast or in person, they just heard you say you're a detailed person, and they all laughed at you and said, no, she's not. But I want to explain the difference. What I think I heard you say is, when I am evaluating somebody, if you're coming to me and telling me you're my interior designer and you're pitching me, I am looking for the details. Like, I'm not going to execute details, but that's exactly why when you're going to give me your pitch, your agreements, your deliverables, I am going to get so finite in those, so that once I give you my money, now it's like, you're the grown up. We're very clear on what I hired you to do. You're owning all these details, and I'm moving on. So that's the difference in me personally being a detailed orientated person in execution, as opposed to a detailed orientated person in understanding deliverables, contracts, agreements. Is that what you're saying? And conversations. Am I on the right track with you there?
Absolutely. And I also think that you care about the details, but you don't always have to be the one to execute, but you are in charge of who's executing.
Amen, sister. Amen.
Yeah. So it's a control thing in this very beautiful managerial space. Like, I see it all. I don't have to do it all, but I have to make sure that if you're doing it for me, you're doing all the things that I see. You don't have to be the one actually doing the things. You're just the one making sure that all the things get done.
That's exactly me. And what I am absolutely floored is, how did you figure that out? We have never talked before. We have not emailed before. How did you figure that out in 5 minutes of watching me on video?
It's in your face. So, and I'm being facetious, but it really is in your face. And so that is the beauty of this work. It is like a personality test without the test, because people give us our faces. It shows as soon as they show up on camera or on Facebook or wherever you see them, you can get a picture as to how they think. And really, for you, I saw it in the beautiful line of your nose. In just in the few minutes that I saw your face, you have a really nice long royal face. So there's kind of 5 facial personality types that, and so as soon as I saw you, I was like, oh, LuAnn's a royal. And so these are all characteristics, that detail oriented, beautiful experience creating kind of person. That's who you are. And then your beautiful eyebrows were nice and high. There's this really good space between your eye and your eyebrow, which is someone who has high standards and holds herself and others to high standards. So just in knowing that, I know something about you, and that as a salesperson gives me an edge in terms of how I would position everything that I need to position to make sure that, oh wow, this person gets me and they're going to work the way I need them to work. Or even, as just a person chatting with you, I'm not going to dishonor the way that you see the world, and try to tailor my conversation and our connection so that it resonates with how you see the world.
Bizarre. Okay. So I thought that this was what you just described was features in my face. And I think I was thinking about reactions in my face. And that's why I was like, we didn't talk long enough to have any reactions in my face. Like, I don't get it. So literally by features, then people
Yes.
are types, and that their personality is revealed in features.
Yes. And the beauty of the facial intelligence work is that it is kind of proactive rather than reactive. Because if you see a face for the first time, or you even look at a profile picture on LinkedIn or Facebook, you get an idea as to what that person's personality type might be. It's just similar to saying, here, take this quiz, and then I'll get your Myers-Briggs profile, and now I know how to talk to you. You don't
Mm.
have to do that. You can do that very subtly but strategically. And then as someone gets more into the work, then you can look at the way features change in conversation to get more of that reactionary response. Oh, okay, well, I can see her eyes did this or her mouth did that. So now I know what that meant in terms of how she received my information. So that's kind of the micro expression body language part of it, but that's reactive. And really in sales, we want to be as proactive as we can be. So using the features as a personality design template, then that gives you the ability to be more proactive in the way you may or may not change how you present your information based on the person that's going to be in front of you, either on Zoom or in person.
Whoa. Okay. So when are there, when we think about Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram and all of those things, there's multiple results, right? The different
Yes.
combinations. So is how many combinations, like you just said, okay, so you're looking at my eyebrows, you're looking at the length of my face, the length of my nose, all of those things. Well, how many combinations of those are we looking for? Just, heart shape, round face, square shape, long face? Like, even that, I have to tell you, all the years you're in high school and Cosmopolitan, what kind of face are you? I'm like, I have no idea what kind of face I'm in. It doesn't look like a heart. It doesn't look like a square. I don't know what the hell it looks like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how do you, where are we in on those types of differentiators?
Yeah, so in facial intelligence, there's 5 main kind of archetypal personalities, but most people are a strong combination of 2, maybe 3 for general personality. So you know how I said, well, LuAnn, you're very royal, so that's very much, XYZ kind of personality traits. Here's what those fall under. However, and the way that you determine those are by looking at combinations of features. So I look for the feature that kind of says hello to me first, and that's where my starting point is. So when you came on camera, I saw your beautiful nose, and I was like, oh, that's a really royal nose. And then I look for, are there any other potential features that fit into the royal feature list? And so then I saw your eyebrows and the length of your face, and I was like, okay, yeah. So she really starts with royal. But then you have some dimples. So, then there's a little bit of captivator in there, which is another personality. So I know you're a combination of at least 2 pretty strongly. However, we all have every feature. So even though certain features, 2 or 3 lend to saying, oh, this person is royal or captivator or any of the others, we all still have those features. So even though I'm not very royal, I still have a nose, and each feature has a meaning about how that person relates to the world based on the design of the feature and the meaning of that feature. So you can get very robust with what you know, or you can stay pretty surface and know, okay, if I can pick out a few features and their meanings, then that's enough for me to know where to go with certain things.
That's crazy. All right. And so what I'm hearing is there's royal, there's captivator. What are some of the other types of you said there are 5 archetypes. What are the other 5?
Yes. Yes. So we have sage, which is very much someone who's very creative and intuitive. We have warriors who are very strategy oriented, the doers, the athletes. The captivators that I mentioned are very empathic and fun loving and joyful, and they're really the natural center of attention. We have nurturers who are, the warm kind of mother energy. They take care of everything and want to feed you and listen to your problems and the warriors of the world. And then we have the royals who are very much designed to create beautiful experiences for others. So they pay attention to the details. They can see the big picture. They're very, very spatially aware. So they have this intuition of spaces. A royal can walk into a room and just feel it. Does that resonate with you at all?
Oh, just a little.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And so
bizarre,
it's no
this
wonder
stuff.
you're in design, because you're designed for design. So it's really interesting to see even how people choose their careers based on what their faces say about how they're designed. So.
Well, do you know where that connects me back to is I came to work, and I'm not actually in interior design, I'm in custom window treatments, right? And so, but when I came to work in custom window treatments, I've said it 1,000 times. When I met Vin, he had started window work 6 months before I met him. And I say all the time, if I had met him and he was running a copier shop, we'd have a heck of a copier machine business right now. And I wouldn't meet anybody in this world because I would be talking to copy salespeople, okay? Because I didn't pick window treatments. I picked him, and he had already picked window treatments for practical reasons, not emotional reasons. But what I always remember, the big aha was, I went into window treatments, selling window treatments, because I was a salesperson. It was like, okay, so we're going to sell blinds and drapes. Instead of selling, health club memberships and other things that I had sold, now it's blinds and drapes. But I remember in the early days, the process of walking into somebody's house and them saying, what should I do on this window? Literally learning that I did understand space. And I did know how big that valance should be without asking a book. And I could look at somebody's color and they'd say, I'm looking for this color of yellow in a fabric. And this was before cell phones. You can't take a picture of somebody's sofa then. It was a Polaroid, for crying out loud, or you had to send it away to be developed. But I didn't even worry about it because I would look at their yellow sofa and I could come back to my showroom and I could pick that yellow. And that was the first time that I remember thinking, oh, I guess I'm creative. I didn't know that because I was such a practical sort that I never leaned into that. And I associated creativity with drawing and art and things like that. So it's kind of crazy that you just said that.
Yeah, yeah, isn't it though? And it's just, and it's the creativity that you have is about, okay, how do I make this space beautiful? And so it's this connection to the beauty of the space rather than necessarily, oh, well, I couldn't draw it, or I don't, but I just know how to make it feel beautiful.
Right.
And so from that feeling perspective, then, you can't really go wrong because it's intuitive for you.
Interesting. So now, is it important, like most things in sales, to really have a clear understanding of yourself and who you are? And then, so if I'm a designer listening and maybe I'm a nurturer or I'm a captivator, and I understand you said we're going to be overlap and have qualities of a couple of different, but if you're driving, facial features are suggesting that you're, say, a warrior. Do you, as a warrior, is it helpful to know you're a warrior if you're looking at a royal or you're looking at a nurturer, so that you sort of check your own impulses and your own way of thinking so that you're dealing with and trying to reach them at their space? Is that the whole point of this?
Absolutely. Wow, you're a quick study. Yes, that really is the whole point. It's because we tend to, as kids, we're kind of taught that golden rule, which is, treat others the way you want to be treated. So we tend to think, oh, well, if I like this, then all I have to do is tell people all the reasons why I like it, and then they'll like it too, and they'll want to buy it. But really, people want to be treated the way they want to be treated. So you really have to see, okay, well, if I have a warrior face and that person has a captivator face, they may love this thing that I'm selling them, but they're not going to love it for the reasons that I would. So a warrior will be, it's practical, it's economical. You can, it's fast. There are all these practicality, features that a warrior may love, but a captivator is, they don't care about that. They care about, well, will it be fun? Will it be easy? Can I easily move from A to B? And then is it going to keep me guessing? Because, captivators are about fun. And, is it red? Is it sparkly? And so those things will be what would draw a captivator to the product or service. So understanding how they need to see the features or the benefits of the thing that you're selling in a different way than you may intuitively want to communicate that will be the difference between getting that yes a lot faster. Because if you start talking about how sparkly and fun it's going to be, captivators like, okay, well, here's my credit card, how do I sign up? In my language here.
Right. And so what's interesting is that as you're describing some of the characteristics of each of the archetypes, I'm hearing myself in almost all of them. And so I know I'm not the most unique person on the planet. So I'm sure many of our listeners are saying, oh, I feel like I'm a captain. No, I'm a royal. I'm a this. And so the thing is it that you have all of them to some degree, or is it that it's dictated by the situation? So, for example, as you described in the beginning, that I want the details. So if you're selling me something, yes, ma'am, I want all the details, bog me down in it. Let's get all the agreements clear before I give you your money. Once I give you my money, I'm done. I'm out. Go deliver me the details. But there's other situations where I could give less. It's like, oh, okay, is that going to be fun? Let's do that. I mean, that's, so I'm not sure how do we process that we feel like so many of your descriptors can apply to us in different situations.
Absolutely. So, we all have all the features. So you're right that we all, to some degree, can resonate with any of the scenarios. It really is how much one combination looks like it's stronger than the other. And it's a good way to start looking at the start. So again, like, it's a proactive process. If you know you're going to be meeting a client on Zoom and you do your research and you see them on Facebook and they look like they have a little bit of warrior and a little bit of captivator, then you may want to do some research. Are they more out there running in the woods, or are they more out there with party hats on? Because then you'll know which archetype might be a little stronger than the other as to where to lead. What you'll also begin to understand is that as you start the conversation and you start it with a train of thought that is language and communication geared to one archetypal kind of personality profile, in the responses from how they say things, then you'll be like, oh, okay, well, they're kind of more thinking warrior-ish right now, so maybe I need to switch gears. So you'll begin to recognize the language and the responses and the questions that your prospect will ask to know if you're on the right track or not, instead of saying, okay, well, then I'm just going to switch back to the way I normally do it. You'll be able to kind of handle those objections with a little more strategy than if you didn't know at all what any of their features were talking to you about.
Okay. I hear that. And I guess where I'm wondering is, am I going to use the same tactics whether or not I'm potentially, look, everything we do all day long is selling. I just said this to a coaching client the other day. I don't care if you're having a conversation with your wife, your husband, your kids, you're selling them. If you want your kids to put your sneakers on, you're selling them. If you want them to go to bed on time, you're selling them. Like however you do it, or you're working with a client, even if it's a signed contract with a client, now you're doing a design presentation or you're reintroducing a revision, you're selling them on that, right? So, does it matter, like when you sell a warrior or a royal, something of major importance, a design project, a home, a car, are the cues and the conversation there different than if you're selling me on going with you to an event or a party, right? So like, do you see what I'm saying? Because
Yes, I
okay,
do.
go ahead.
Yeah, because I think you're right. Depending on what it is, they may have different ideas. So, for example, if you're buying a car, no matter if you're a nurturer or you're a warrior, you're still going to be thinking about price. You're still going to be thinking about efficiency. You're going to be thinking about all those things. They're going to be important to you. However, what's going to be important to a nurturer that may never be important to a warrior is a nurturer is going to care about price. They're going to care about reliability. They're going to care about, you know, all the practical things, but they're also going to care about, will this fit my whole family? Because nurturers are very family oriented. Is this going to be comfortable? Can I drink coffee in here? And and if it spills, is it okay?
How does
Because
the
that's,
seats feel? Is they plush? Are they
yes,
this? Okay.
exactly. And that may never be a concern for a warrior because they just, well, you know what, it's fine. And so if you're the warrior salesperson and you never mention anything family
Mm.
oriented to a nurturer face, then you may hit all the practicality marks, but you may miss on the thing that's most important to them. So it's not like we don't consider everything. It's just, what is that little subtle thing that that person absolutely needs to know that their face is telling you about that will take it over the edge to a definite yes rather than I'm going to think about this. Does
Now
that
I
make
got
sense?
it. Yeah, yeah. No, now
Okay.
it boom, like light bulb just went off. Okay. Because in my experience in sales, going on 50 years here, 40 years, whatever it is, I think I've been selling since I'm out of the womb, my mom will tell you. So we're going on 60 years in sales. Um, I'm always, uh, I'm always saying, ask enough questions to get to what you need, which is the hot button. And so what I'm hearing from you is, no, if we're buying a car, no matter what personality we are, we're going to have certain criteria. It's got to have four wheels. It's got to have an engine. It's got to be cost efficient. It's got to be, all the things. But the next layer of importance can be different to every person. And what you're saying is, in my past, I have gotten to that by asking many questions. And so who's going to drive in the car? Hey, what's going on? What are you doing this weekend? Oh, I just found out you have 16 kids and they all have to go to soccer, blah, blah, blah. So now 10 minutes later, I'm going to say, maybe we want to look at a minivan because you've got a lot of kids that all have to get to soccer. Like, I'm going to ask all those questions so that I can bring them around in my language, around into my sales presentation and my close for you. But what you're saying is, if I were adept at reading the archetype facial structures, I could on point say hello to somebody, still do my good salesmanship of asking conversation and listening to the answers, but I can from get-go sort of tailor my responses. That's talk to the efficiency, talk to the things, but layer in the coziness for a nurturer, or stick to the facts, ma'am, for a worrier, or whatever for whatever.
Exactly. And I mean, you are a really great seasoned salesperson. So you could get there by asking all the questions that you get. But some people, it's just not natural for them.
Mm.
Like you said before, we're selling all the time for everything, but not everybody looks at it that way. So for people who are a little less comfortable with all of that, the facial piece gives them some clues as to where to go or what not to forget in that discovery phase so that they can have a little bit more confidence around making sure that they're hitting those hot buttons or those important things for those other people that maybe they might miss because it's not their happy place
Mm.
sales, right?
Right. Understood. Totally understood. So it also reminds me of that book, the Five Love Languages or something, right? It's
Mhm.
understanding. It's so typical as human beings, like you said, we're raised to do unto others as we want unto ourselves. So it's so typical in a relationship to keep giving affection, and how come it's not working when the other person wants time or wants service or whatever those love languages are, right? it's
Exactly.
and so it's getting out of your box and your head and understanding what the other person really needs.
Absolutely. Yeah, and being able to do that with some confidence because their face is kind of telling you that rather than guessing. Well, maybe they want to know if this is going to be good for their family. Maybe they want a fun color, but you don't know, but some clues like dimples or something like that will give you an idea. Yeah, they value fun a little bit too. So maybe I should throw in some of the fun aspects of this thing there too and just see where that goes. So, you get some clues as to, oh, what that other sales love language might be for them by
Interesting.
looking at their face. Yeah.
Interesting. And so is it something that we, in a podcast like this, we can explain in a way that's meaningful for someone to take some information away and start to try and practice it? Or is it just too complicated to explain it on a podcast? Like how do we do this so that it's a takeaway for the audience, other than that's a great concept, but I don't know how to use it?
Yeah, actually, I'm so glad you asked that question because, one of the things that I always tell people, so absolutely yes, and I'm going to give you a tip here for all of your listeners and for yourself, is that, this is pretty robust work. It's like learning a new language. You can't learn it all and be fluent in a day, but you can learn a couple of key phrases. So, what I like to tell people, especially starting out, and especially in a sales scenario, is to look at one feature. And if you can get good at just recognizing that one feature and what the iterations of that means, then you can at least start with a little bit more information than you had before. So, one feature that I like to give people to look at is eyebrows, because one of the things that our eyebrows tell us is how people make decisions. So, kind of what filter they go through when they're thinking about making a decision on something. So, if someone has very straight eyebrows, so they kind of look like straight lines across, then this is someone who values logic. So, this is the person who wants to hear A, B, C, one, two, three, give me the facts. Very much kind of warrior archetype connections there. And so, if you are someone who has rounded eyebrows as the salesperson and you're looking at someone with straight eyebrows, then you're going to know, okay, I need to be very logical, even though your tendency might not be that way because that's not how you make decisions.
Interesting.
Does that,
Okay. Yes,
yeah.
makes sense.
And so someone with rounded eyebrows, even though they may, especially if they're strong and thick, they're still going to have some logic and strategy that they're going to employ in their decision making strategy. But because those eyebrows are rounded, one of the things that's definitely going to factor into their yes will be, is this good for the people concerned in my world? So is this good for my family? Is this good for my employees? Is this a good decision for the people that I'm going to be touching with the result of this purchase or this yes? And so that's where those subtleties come in, because nice thick eyebrows always mean to some degree of value of logic, but round thick eyebrows means logic plus family. Straight eyebrows, just logic.
Hmm.
And then someone who has more peaked eyebrows, so the ones that kind of look like they like a little bit of an upside down V, there's a peak in them. This is someone who's a little bit more reactive. They're a quicker decision maker. So you kind of want to get to the point. You want to make sure you hit all the buttons really quickly, because if it resonates with them, they're going to say yes fast. And if it takes you too long to get to the point, then they're going to be like, yeah, okay, this is too complicated. I'm going to move on. So just knowing those three things with three different eyebrow shapes, now you're ahead of the game than if you were yesterday, because now when you rounded eyebrow salesperson is talking to peaky eyebrow salesperson. To peaky eyebrow prospect, you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to get to the point. Here are the facts. Do you have any questions? And, kind of speed it up a little bit because they're fast thinkers, fast responders, rather than, oh, let me tell you about my family. And would your family like this? And because they don't care about that,
Right.
really. And they might, but in the moment, that's not the first filter they go through in their decision making strategy. So that's one quick way to start applying this type of work, and really just getting a framework of, how do I look in the mirror and how does my person that I'm talking to look, and are we similar or different? So do I need to change my approach slightly to resonate more with them than I would before?
Okay. And so this is like such a silly question, but it just begs being asked. So women pluck their eyebrows and shape their eyebrows. I understand there's an inherent shape that's there, but some people have dramatically altered the shape of their eyebrows. And is it what they alter it to is their inner version of themselves? Like, you know what I'm saying? Or is that
Yeah.
just totally crazy pants?
No, actually, yes. So when you are shaping or adding to your eyebrows, then you want to try to follow the natural line because you have this natural way of thinking and responding. If you change it, then, because we all unconsciously read faces, when you're looking in the mirror and you're seeing yourself, all of a sudden, if you're usually a straight eyebrowed person and you add in a peak, you're going to unconsciously see a peaked eyebrow and you're going to think, oh, well, that means I should be more reactive. And then you're going to start making decisions more quickly than you would if you were following your logic reflection. And that could get you into some trouble because you're not used to behaving in that way. So we respond to what we see unconsciously and consciously. And sometimes if we present ourselves with an image that isn't resonant with that original design, then it may throw us out of whack a little bit.
Okay.
So you do kind of want to try to follow the original line. Now,
Mm.
for women especially, or anyone who wants to, another thing that eyebrows speak to is confidence and self-assuredness. So oftentimes I will tell clients to, fill in their eyebrows a little bit thicker, especially if they have thinner eyebrows, following that natural line, because when they look in the mirror, then they're going to feel more confident and more self-assured, and they're going to present that way when they're looking at a potential client or when they're in a meeting, because we all unconsciously read faces, and so that will help them to be more confident and more assertive. So as a rule, whenever I'm coming onto anything with clients or in a public forum, even here, even though we're not really looking at each other, I always fill in my eyebrows to boost that confidence level, just to unconsciously feel more self-assured.
That's funny because I've done the same thing. I'm like, oh, this is a paid speaking engagement on Zoom, LuAnn. You got to do your eyebrows.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm like doing a coaching session or a podcast, I'm like, whatever, the eyebrow, I don't even think about it.
Mhm.
That's so funny. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So now, question for you: how do you know this to be true? Right? Is this like there's just like, is there 16 gabillion studies on this and it's been proven over and over that everybody with a long nose and this and that and the other thing, there's 3 characteristics of a royal and it's just proven over and over again? Or is it anecdotal proof on your part? I'm not discounting whatever it is. I'm just curious where it
Mhm.
comes from.
Yeah. So the roots of the work actually started in it's based on Chinese medicine. So when they first started looking at faces for any type of information other than what's a nose and that there's a nose there, it began as a way to look at faces to see if there were any changes in features or markings or wrinkles, to see if a healer could understand what was going on from a health perspective for people. Because in ancient China, they couldn't touch their patients and that kind of thing. And so they began to catalog features and markings and wrinkles in such a way to map to systems in the body from a health perspective. And so that's the precursor to acupuncture points and Eastern medicine theory. And in doing that, what they began to notice was that there were trends in personality behavior and habits and responses to life experience that were showing up in key features and in the way that wrinkles developed and that kind of stuff. So the origins of the work began as this diagnosis by observation process. Many, many years ago in ancient China. And through the years, there have been studies now where people are trying to map um, features. So they've done a lot of work with matching expressions. So if you're familiar with Paul Ekman and micro expressions work, because there's some universal expressions, and then those expressions map to features, which then also validate the meanings of the features from a Chinese medicine perspective. And throughout the years as well, they've started to do some studies with, changes in features from, people who go to war and then come back, and what that means, and how the way their personalities change and the impact of the look of their face from what they see and experience, which then validates the work that was originally put forth from the Chinese medicine diagnosis by observation listing of features and meanings. And so there have been studies through the years, and especially now with facial, iPhones being opened by faces and stuff, there's a lot more correlating being done. And so I think we'll find throughout the next few years that there'll be more validation from a modern day perspective to the work. However, in my 11 years of doing this and reading thousands of faces, I have found that there've been one or two times where I've read someone wrong, and that's been because they didn't tell me about some kind of plastic surgery or cosmetic surgery that they had that altered their features, and that I was reading the face in the moment and not the underlying thing that they had before.
Interesting. That's interesting. So the thing is then, when we think about this, I mean, look, I can hear how much you have studied this, learned this, devoted your career to understanding it. Most of us aren't going to do that. And I know that when I'm trying to teach the salespeople that work for me, I'm constantly saying, please ask a question and listen. Don't be formulating your next question while they're talking. Don't be answering their question for them while they're talking. You need to hear all the way to the end, because you don't know where the nugget is going to be. That's going to be the thing that's going to be their driver for buying. And so that's easy enough. It's hard to do, but it's easy enough to repeat and teach. But with something like this, to what level can we expect to employ this and understand it and employ it? You know what I'm saying? It's like if I could do an Enneagram on every potential client, then I could understand, their driving factors or the Myers-Briggs or the predictive index. But what can I expect to really learn and understand about facial recognition that in the moment I can turn around? And of course, I understand what you're saying. You can look them up beforehand on LinkedIn and Facebook to see their face. But you know what I'm asking you?
Yes, absolutely. I think there are a few things. One is that if you're not the most confident salesperson and you want to get more confident and find a tool that might help you with it, then this is a pretty good tool, because it's something you can use for life in any aspect of your life. The other thing is that what most of us don't realize is that even when we're listening from a five senses perspective, when we're taking in information, if we were to spread, 100% of access of information across the five senses, we get 11% of the possible 100% of information we can get from our auditory sense, but 84% comes from our visuals. So we don't pay enough attention to what we're seeing. Even if you're just doing a phone call, I say to people, be aware of what you put in your surroundings, so that you're using as much of that visual acuity that you can have to then enhance what it is that you're hearing. So we all unconsciously read faces, and not all of us want to study it and are like face junkies like me. But if you can realize that the visual information that you're getting is also really important, and that you do unconsciously read faces, you can begin to start looking at that other prospect and saying, okay, well, what feature is kind of saying hello to me, shining its light on me, so that it's telling me, okay, I need to pay attention here. And even if you don't know what a nose means, if a nose is saying something to you, then get curious, because that means that that face has more information for you, so you can dig deeper, and you don't fall into that oblivion, like you're saying, of, okay, well, what's the next thing I'm going to say, what's the next thing I'm going to say. You can be more present. And I think really in sales, presence is what is so important, to really understanding that client's response and their need, and to have the dance be very, very synergistic rather than a choppy kind of dance. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. It's being present in just not the language and the verbal, but being present in the visual too, and making sure you're picking up all the cues. And also just what's at face value at you're looking at. So how do people learn the rest of, like, the different types of noses and the different, do they need to work with you one-on-one? Is there charts and cheat sheets? Like, how do we know the rest of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on the website, there is a free fast method introductory visual ebook there. And then I have introduction to facial intelligence courses that people can take and do self-study. So even if you just want to get a brief overview, just to feel out if this is really going to help you in whatever industry you're in, then you can do one of those and start the journey. And then if you really want to get more into it, then I definitely have more advanced courses and coaching that I do with people.
Interesting. And can you cite for us do you have any particular story, client that you could think of where we could understand that person's journey in their success of employing these methods? Anything come to mind, Michelle?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think in the early days of doing this work, which really, really validated it for me, it was I had well, there's actually two stories, but I had a client who was coming to me originally when I first started my coaching practice. I was just doing kind of life coaching stuff and following a methodology that I learned through the coaching academy that I studied with. And someone was coming to me, and she'd come back and forth for a little while. And after finishing our 12-week time, a few weeks later, she came back and was still having the same problem. And I had just started my facial reading journey. And the moment she walked into my office, I took one look at her nose and I said, okay, now I understand what's going on. And it was all the things that she couldn't say to me were showing up in that one feature to tell me how she was looking at the world and why she was getting the responses that she was getting. So, very much a royal kind of personality like you, but she was out of balance in the sense that she was very, very tied to outcomes and very, very perfectionistic. And when things didn't go exactly the way she planned, then she would just crumple. And so we just talked about what that design meant about her, like being a perfectionist and really wanting to create beautiful experiences without putting all that pressure on herself, and helping the people in her world understand that this is how she saw every scenario, and then they could help her with that journey. Totally changed her life around. She left the job she was at. She started her own business. She left the relationship she was in. A few months later, met the man that she would eventually marry. She just wrote a best-selling book and had a baby. So her life totally turned around from just being able to look in the mirror and see herself differently, and honor the person she was designed to be in a new way.
So get
So
me in there on that for a second. So what you're saying is that she has an outlook on life that you've ultimately discovered by her facial, by her face, by looking at her face. And once you explained to her what that outlook was, then she was able to process it and understand how, in all of her relationships and situations, she was expecting a certain path or a certain way for things to be done because based on what she was wanting. So she wasn't getting results because she was going after it her way as opposed to understanding other people have different ways. Is that what you're saying?
that, and she had put incredibly high standards on everything and just thought that that was the way to be. And so everything had to be absolutely perfect.
Oh,
And
and
when
that,
we started to look at things and say, well, if you were talking to your best friend, would this be good enough? And she'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Then she started realizing that, wow, she was putting so much pressure on herself to have everything be perfect, that she was missing the beauty in how things were just showing up the way they were and
mm,
unfolding the way they were.
okay.
And then, yeah, and then I had another client more recently that I was working with who started to understand the way she saw herself and the way she worked with her clients. And her job was 100% sales, commission sales. And within a month of getting exposed to the work and understanding how she was kind of not, like looking at the eyebrows, the things that just the little things that I talked about here with how to see people's scenarios slightly differently by recognizing the differences in their faces from hers. Her average sale went up by $500 within a month, and she closed 30% more business than she was before starting to do work with me. So,
Wow. Okay.
mhm.
And I feel like it's almost like, again, I keep processing it through my window work sales team. I feel like it's another cheat sheet of instead of just consistently imploring them to listen and not talk, it is, and take this evaluation in and start to process the way you speak and the way you present and the selling features that you enunciate based on what is important to the archetype.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely. And there's even things like the way you show up and the way, certain colors resonate with certain archetypes. So if you know that a customer is a certain archetype, then you can, wear a green tie that day or something. So you can create resonance very subtly as well. So
mm,
there's, you don't necessarily have to do everything overtly, but there is also some subtlety that comes with understanding what people resonate with, and maybe why clients might be wanting to choose certain colors, and you just think this should work, but just their faces say this is what resonates with them from a comfort level as well.
okay. And then a couple of times you mentioned the wrinkles in someone's face. And
Mhm.
I just have to ask, are we talking about the wrinkles that we have when we're 5 and we smile, or the wrinkles that we have when we're 58 and we smile? Like, which wrinkles are we talking about here?
Well, they're all the same, except so really
They're
what
not,
the
though, because
way
when I
that
look at my smiles at 30 years old, they're not the same, Michelle. They're in the
well, I
same
think
places,
that's
there's just more of them.
exactly. And that's a perspective thing. So
Okay.
that's what wrinkles are really the result of making the same expression over time. A lot of the time. So every time you make an expression, then the longer you live, the more that expression is going to start carving into your face. So really, a wrinkle is it's a record of the emotional journey that you repeatedly have. So if we see lots of what we call in the West crow's feet, in facial intelligence, we call those joy lines. So when I see those showing up and I see them as a permanent fixture on a face, then I'm like, wow, this is a person who feels joy a lot. And it's part of their story. And it's there as a marker that, yeah, they smile a lot. And that's what those are showing. And then there are the wrinkles that show up because people are in emotional states habitually that aren't necessarily serving them. And when you see those, then you can understand kind of the emotional position people are coming from. So, one of the ones that I point out often is if you think about if someone has a downturned mouth and have like some wrinkles that come down the face from the corners of their mouth, can you picture that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, like if you're making a frown, and if those show up more permanently, oftentimes we see those on nurturer faces, and but we see them on every face. But chances are they'll show up more often on a nurturer face. And that oftentimes means that someone who feels underappreciated, or they're overworked, or they're in this habitual thought of being disappointed, like, oh my god, I have to do everything, no one helps me, or every time I ask for help I don't get it, or no one ever says thank you. And so from a sales perspective, when you see something like that on someone's face, then you can say, wow, okay, well, I'm not going to overpromise and underdeliver, because that person is used to being disappointed. I don't want to be the one to disappoint them. So sometimes wrinkles can be very key in helping us understand how we position our things and the types of commitments we say we're going to make to those potential clients, because we don't want to follow the narrative that they already have in their head of being disappointed or whatever, and be the one to say, well, thank you for accommodating this time change for me, or, really, really being, by understanding the context of the wrinkle, then you can almost help to dispel that underlying negative thought that they have, if you know what that means.
Interesting. So often we think that when we meet that person, that's a great example, that person that is just never happy. Let's just call it that. We're just never happy. It's never good enough. Oh, you made the most beautiful room, but it arrived one day late. It was like $300,000 worth of product and the lamp came the next day, right? Like that's that person, right? Yeah. And so what you're saying is if we notice those facial features in somebody at the beginning, I hear that. Don't like, hey, pie in the sky, it'll all be fine, because another personality be like, hey, a day late, a week late, we're all good. But that personality is looking and expecting to be disappointed, even though, and I'm going to ask you this, it's subconscious to them. They're not looking at you saying, you're going to disappoint me. They just have this series and this look on life that's what happens. So the slightest disappointment is just like, you're just like all the rest of them, and you disappointed me too, right? Is that what we're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And sometimes as the salesperson, you walk in and you're like, oh, okay, it's going to be one of those, because you can see that on the face, even though you don't necessarily consciously know what it means. But when you consciously know what it means, then you can say, I know you're probably used to people not delivering or disappointing you, and that is not our intention here. We may not be perfect, but you can call us anytime, or here's what we are committed to do. And, then you can kind of almost dispel the myth before it even happens for them, because yes, you're right. They're going to unconsciously think, yeah, I'm going to do this, but it's not going to work out exactly like I wanted to anyway. Right. And so if you recognize that, you can almost start to, set the stage to show that even if you might be off with a deadline or something, that's not your intention, and that you're there for them. And that can go a long way to kind of changing the relationship.
It's very, I'm thinking about over the course of the years, my own personal journey in sales, and especially again, as I continue to mention training and working with our sales team, Vin and I are doing so much less of the selling in our company now, and we're actually doing almost twice the volume. Okay. So we're managing a lot. And what I hear each of us saying on a regular basis is, you must understand the type of client that you're dealing with each time. And so we have not had the language of look at their face to see some of these markers. But I think we've always picked it up by verbal, by cues, by conversation, by those nuances, and maybe subconsciously by the facial recognition. But I can just hear each of us saying things to our team like, this is not the kind of person that when they call you on Tuesday, you call them back on Thursday. You must consistently make the distinction between the person that you met in their home and when you say, I'll call you back today, will be okay if Tuesday is Thursday, and the person that will not. Because there is a difference and there's a way to discern that person, and you have to show up for that person the way they need you to show up. And so just saying, saying that we have a rule of emailing back within 24 hours is not good enough, because if you're there Tuesday morning and you pick up the cues that that person is a today person, then who cares about Wednesday? Like, you're losing that person, right?
Exactly. And I mean, I think over time, you kind of develop that intuitive hit that who that person is. And especially people who are newer to sales and that kind of stuff, they might not know that, or they might think, oh, it's okay because it would be okay for me, because they're
Right.
looking at the world from their perspective. And it, not everybody is that way. And so this particular tool kind of gives you that little bit of an edge, like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, okay, you never are late for a royal, or you keep your word for a warrior, because they're very much about right and wrong, that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Right.
And it's okay if the royal is shows up late, because and this is no slight to you in the moment, but because they have to get things perfect. And so they're like, well, I had to show up for you perfectly. I can't show up not perfect for you. That would dishonor
God.
you. But if you show up late for a royal, then they're like, hey, my time is really valuable, and I'm scheduled all this stuff today, and you just threw everything off 5 minutes, and that throws the energy of the whole day off. So you kind of have to understand the kind of subtle motivations of everybody, and then say, okay, now I get it. And so it really is just a relationship creating exercise.
I love it. I think it's interesting. I'm going to start to read about it. And if we go to your website and we get this FAST guide, which stands for Facial Acuity Sales Tactics, okay? If we get this guide, this will give us the beginnings of the guts on something that we can sort of put together and try and play around with and put into action.
Absolutely. Yes. And I have a YouTube channel. I think it's Michelle Butt. You just find my name, and I do lots of tips there on different things. There was a series on why people may say no, how to get a yes just based on faces and stuff like that. So, there's lots of stuff I've put out there for people to begin to dabble into the work, or even just dabble into like starting to look at faces for clues and trusting their unconscious read, because sometimes we don't pay enough attention, so we don't know that we are unconsciously actually picking stuff up. But when you really start to pay attention to the visuals that are presented to you when you meet new people, then even your unconscious hit will be a leg up than if you weren't paying attention.
I think it's great. I love it. I mean, I'm going to download your thing. It's at Michelle with two L's, but with two T's. So michellebutt.com. And the download is there. I'm going to get it because I'm going to tell you what, in my world, through my cousin Eileen's coaching and instruction, I utilize the predictive index. And it really tells you the core personality tendencies of each person. And so every employee that we have their predictive index on ourselves. And we have meetings with our team to describe the differences in one person's predictive index and another person's predictive index. And we talk to our team about, giving grace for what and how your other teammate processes things. You know what I mean? It's the exact same thing that you're talking about. It's, within the structure of a company, various roles have different needs. So my salespeople need to be persuasive and drivers and independent and less likely that they need an attention to detail. But my admins need to be highly attention to detail. I need them to be much less persuasive personalities. I really don't need them to be all of that much independent. And I need them to be, for a data entry person, I need them to be slow and steady and accurate. But for an office coordinator, I need her to be fast and quick and accurate. And so what happens is you notice when the different personalities, the sales team is interacting with the admin team, their core personalities are so different,
Mm-hmm.
that when they show up as themselves and expect results by delivering communication and strategies and deliverables to each other in their superpowers, is what we call it, they don't understand why the other person won't get on board and do it. It's like, well, you didn't speak their language. They don't even hear that. And so this is
Yeah.
like one more thing, which would be very interesting to download this and actually study. I think we're up to like 18 people on our team now between the two companies. So very interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point too, because there is, there's two things that we need to recognize. Is one is that we all kind of show up with our core personality, and you can arrive at those in different ways. You can arrive at it from face reading or a Myers-Briggs or this predictive index. There's lots of really great, accurate things that tell us who people are. And then there's also the one piece that I love about facial intelligence is that, that wrinkle piece, or how faces change, because
Mm.
then you see the impact of life experience and how people are relating to their world that may be different than how they're designed because of circumstances that they've been through. And that gives you the ability to be more understanding, more compassionate, change the way you approach someone, which can really help a team dynamic. And then the other thing is just understanding that when people have strengths in certain areas and they are focused on that strength, it doesn't necessarily mean that then they aren't um, a good fit. It just means they're a good fit for that role, and people have to give them some grace.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I look at that, it's like, we often talk about bedside manner. And so, like, if you're going to your family doctor, you might want someone who's more nurturing and caring and will listen to you, you know talk about all the woes and the aches and pains. But if you're going to a surgeon, they may be someone, the royal with a very, very pronounced nose, and have no time for any small talk. And they are usually, people often talk about surgeons having really bad bedside manner. But that face will tell you that they are paying attention to detail, and
Mm.
they want to focus just on the project at hand. And so, if I'm going to a surgeon, I'd rather have a royal surgeon than a nurturer one, because I don't care how nice he is to me if he can't focus very strategically and precisely on getting that tumor out of my body or whatever it may be. So with this work and with these understandings, you can begin to have different expectations of people and not have that emotional response. Like you're saying, like your editor, if they're not the most warm and fuzzy person, then that's okay, because they're really good at their editor role and they
Mm.
don't have to be warm and fuzzy. But your office manager may need to be warmer and fuzzier because they need to interact with everybody and make sure
Exactly.
everybody's on board. And so having that understanding of how we interact and what our expectations are of other people really changes the way we interact.
It's very cool. Very cool. I'm very excited to learn more about it. Anything that I think helps us. I always say sales is a win-win, right? So when, sales isn't about convincing you to have something you don't want or need. Sales is my responsibility as the salesperson to figure out what's the best and most wonderful thing that will complete whatever it is you're trying to do. Like, that's the win-win in sales. And so every tool that we can utilize in order to illuminate what it is that you want, need, and drives you, and will help you, be more successful in connecting with that sales target, that potential client, is just yay. I love it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very
Absolutely.
good. Very good. Well, Michelle, website, like I said, is michellebutt.com, and it's two L's, two T's, and on there we can find the fast download where we can get some more information and review it. So thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Michelle.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
When I started talking with Michelle today, I actually really did think that we were going to talk about how to notice people's facial body language and respond in the moment. right? Like the faces that you make, okay? I had no idea where this conversation was going. The idea of facial intelligence, being able to actually identify people's personalities and tendencies and their needs based on their facial features, is not something I've ever heard of or was ever on my radar. I would not have believed it was possible for Michelle, from a simple 5-minute conversation with me, to pick up on a part of my personality, a key part, right? But that's exactly what happened. And it's kind of amazing. She saw something in my facial structure that was an indicator to her of the way that I lead. And it's that big nose, right? Thanks, Dad, right? But how powerful is that? To be able to gather what personality type your sales target is just by looking at them, and then to use that to inform the way you approach a conversation with them. It's kind of mind-boggling, but I can see that it's easy to kind of like think about the possibilities of this, right? In so many ways, it reminded me of the thing that I've been doing forever, which is that I tap into what people are trying to say, even when it's not really what they're saying. I do have a knack for pulling out the little nuances and understanding of what's being said beneath the words, but I do it with the actual expressions, right? Not necessarily, and not even then with the expressions, but to do it by just looking at someone's face and to automatically be able to calculate, take this approach, take that approach. I don't know. That was interesting. And I love what Michelle said about how it's not necessarily that you limit yourself in your approach. It isn't, oh, this person is a worrier, so I can't say anything emotional. I just have to give them the facts. Because when it comes to design, a list of facts is never going to cut it. We know that, right? We're talking about how people are going to live in their homes every day. So you have to have that emotion there. But the thing about it is making sure that you don't miss that big key factor, that hot button that your sales target really needs to hear in order to close the deal, okay? Whether that's the emotional side or the way that your family will react to the space or the description of the quality or how much fun it will be to host other people, whatever it is, it's being sure that you present it the right way. I'm a big believer in the predictive index. It's something I've worked with Eileen Hahn so often when she's works with us in our hiring process at WindowWorks and here at LuAnn and Inc. It helps us make sure that we have the right people in the right roles, and it helps me consider the way I approach them and understand the way they react to me, right? And to each other, right? I've seen it work over and over again in our business. It's the truth. And we've had guests on the show that swear by the Enneagram. Others relate to Myers-Briggs. We all do have distinct personality types, distinct ways that we approach issues, distinct ways that we communicate with each other, and how we like to be communicated with. And this just feels like another shortcut to that, just another layer, another way to understand how to relate to people and to build those valuable relationships in business and in sales that might make all the difference in the world, right? And as Michelle said, this isn't just something you can read one blog post on and understand it fully, right? This is the kind of thing that you need to build up over time, learning different features or a different one of the 5 facial archetypes, right? But I do believe that it's worth investing some time. Anything that helps us understand our clients better, anything that helps us relate to people on a more meaningful level, I think is worth doing. Now, I, for one, am certainly going to be visiting Michelle's website, Michelle, MICHELLEBUTT.com, and getting that fast guide so I can learn more about the concept and see if I can incorporate it into either of our businesses, right? She also has a quiz that you can take to discover what your own facial features mean. So go check out her website for yourself. And before we end today, I want to take a moment to mention 2 organizations that we have to support us in our businesses, and both have conferences in the next few weeks. Annual conferences are a great way to get to know an organization before joining. You get to meet the leadership, some members, you get to understand the values and the mission of the group, and you get to see if it aligns with you and your goals for your business. The first conference is for my window treatment professionals out there, the Exciting Windows 17th Annual Conference. As you may have heard, Vin, Bill, and myself are now partners in Exciting Windows, and we are making lots of changes and shaking things up over there, I have to say. And I'd love for you to join us at this virtual conference. For our members, it's $325 for the 2 days, okay? But as a non-member, we invite you to the 2 days at only $99 so that you get a chance to see what we're all about. The dates are April 20th and 21st, 2021. That's next week, okay? Stacey Brown Randall, my co-author in this first Power Talk Friday Experts book, is going to be there, as will Stephanie and William Hamilton of Hamilton Creative. Go to excitingwindows.com/conference 2021 to register. All right. The second conference is the Interior Design Society. Their annual conference is on May 6, 2021. I'll be speaking, and guess who else is speaking? Big names: Alexa Hampton and Patty Carpenter and Sophie Donaldson. These are just a few of them. Okay. So go to interiordesignsociety.org to register. All right. My great thanks again to Michelle for an eye-opening, enlightening, and fun conversation. I hope that you are able to walk away today and think about how important it is to relate to your clients on their level, to speak their language, right? You've heard about love languages, right? Okay, to tap into their fears, concerns, needs, and desires, and to find a way to alleviate those fears and help secure that ever-important win-win, because that's what sales is really all about. Thank you so much for joining me today. I always appreciate that you keep me company, and I have to say, I do hope that you decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.